Welcome back, everybody. This is Dusty Circuit here, and I'm here to bring you yet another episode of my series that's just kind of about my history on Autcraft Obsidian, or ACO. And we left off at the beginning of the revival period, and it's kind of the first events that led to the growth of ACO from the state where it was essentially an abandoned server that was in danger of being shut down, but now it's as a result of the events in the revival period, it is now the thriving community that it is today. And also, in that previous episode, I discussed my role in in Atlantis, and kind of also the role that Atlantis played in kind of the revival of ACO, and just how it brought basically it reunited the player base back together. And so my role in Atlantis was that I was mostly just to kind of maintain things like the farms there, and of course not every player actually knows how to operate the farms correctly, and basically what my role was is to maintain the farms and the sorting system and everything, and some things such as the auto smelter and the tree farm I used regularly, and kind of those were kind of things that kept me living in Atlantis. Although actually I think it was like December of 2018, I was to start construction of what's my current base today, but the construction of it basically, let's just say it kind of went on the back burner for me to continue maintaining Atlantis, and later on when ACO is to get a new spawn and a new nether hub, it went on the back burner for me to help with those projects as well. And it wasn't really until around June or July of 2019 when I was to totally move out of Atlantis and claim my third base as my basically completely move into my third base. And for quite a while I was willing to accept like kind of the rules of living in a base that's shared among 10 players or more, of course in the case of what Atlantis was. And but then it was really kind of the whole like feud, or as I call it that, or the kind of the whole disagreements between TK Dubsta and BB 1201, and that it's like, of course they never getting along, and Atlantis falling into turmoil kind of for those reasons, and of course BB like not agreeing with everything TK done in Atlantis or built there, and also the growing lag problem that Atlantis was causing, and well, that and kind of the increased load or demand on the server as more and more players are joining and coming back to ACO, and Atlantis kind of contributing to that problem in a huge way. And basically around the time that I moved out was the time that Atlantis actually, the lag problem was to basically be fixed only by removing every bit of redstone in the area. And but even then, Atlantis still is in kind of a bit of a no-go zone today, and the lag still hasn't been fixed. And so, kind of I decided by that point it's time to move out, time to build my own base, and just kind of just have my own area to call home, and I can build anything, any redstone I want, and build anything I want and do anything I want. So I have been here on my channel before, like I have toured the space before, but on my channel, but this is gonna be kind of the 2020 update for my base. So this is my portal room, and it's one of the this is one of the later areas to be. Well, this wasn't the first area of the base to be built, but this is the first area that we're in. And kind of an interesting thing about the portal is when I built it, I actually put an obsidian portal frame behind it, but basically when it was lit, it was lit as this is actually the portal, but this isn't obsidian, this is black concrete. And like I designed this so that it can still be a vanilla portal, but still kind of have this cool look, but it was lit in a way that it still is technically a non-vanilla portal, just kind of funny. But this portal was lit back when the Dawnster was still an admin. And of course this would have been like early in kind of even like around March of no, I think it was probably in February or of 2019. That's when this portal would have been lit. Or I think it might have even been earlier than that. And so this kind of brings us to the main lobby. And this part of the base alone, I'd have to say took me probably around 3 months to complete. Because, well, this entire area used to be an ocean. Like, basically where I'm standing right now, this would have been ocean floor. And this entire area I had to drain out on my own, but I got to use sponges to do it. And in fact, I had plenty of sponges at my disposal to complete this. But I was to do like 99% of the work all on my own. Although I had a little bit of help from some other players, although most of it I was to do on my own. And in fact, I think I could actually pull up some screenshots I took to show different stages of the construction. So here's kind of, this was the base when the draining process was still occurring. And so basically, how I would have started this process was, as you can see, I put all those pillars up, and what my original plan was that I was going to have put those up to kind of divide the water into areas that I could drain out using the sponges more easily. And I would place a sponge, like I go up a few blocks, then place a sponge, and then go up more. But that process kind of proved to not exactly work as it was intended. So I then resorted to basically kind of building a wall along the entire side, kind of dividing the area lengthwise. And then I go down a few more blocks, and then I build another wall. And then basically the area between those two I would drain out. And then I build another wall next to that one, and then drain that area out, and then I'd end up with 3 different walls, and then I would remove the one in between the first and the third one. And then next wall I go outside of the third one, 3 more blocks, and then repeat that process until one half of the base was drained. And then the second half I would have resorted to go from the top as well as from the side. But the earlier part of this whole process, there was a lot of, I ended up placing lots of scaffolding more towards kind of the top of the dome, kind of what, like, in order to place the sponges. And then that created some spawning spaces for mobs, and let's just say kind of that area became rather dangerous, because that was literally one of the only places mobs could spawn in the area. Mobs would just be everywhere. And as you can kind of see on my mini map, this is kind of this is still when most of the base was still underwater, although this section here that I'm standing in, I managed to clear out. And this is a bit later on in that same process. So as you can see, I've been continuing the same kind of draining method, and then but I put the walls a lot farther down. And as you can see, it's basically almost at the halfway point. And you can kind of see more of the pillars there. And that was a haste 2 beacon that I placed there to make just the process of clearing out the stone much faster. Oh, and also I would have built this dome basically underwater. And I would have used a program, it was an online tool that's called Plots, and I think I would have talked about this actually in my series on Autcraft. But it's this program or this online tool where you can basically have like a 3D model of a sphere, or that lets you build domes in Minecraft more easily. And then this is what I would have used to build this from. Oh, and I also kind of I mentioned this earlier, but this base that I was building, I actually had planned out around the year I first joined ACO, but there's kind of a turn of events that kind of led to me spending more time in other players' bases and been building my own. But around when the update Aquatic came to ACO, I figured what better of a time to build an underwater base than in 1.13, since that was kind of the decision that I made with this. And this is also a bit later on, and this would have been actually after I would, as you can see, so this is later on, and as you can see, I took off the topmost layer of the water. And then also as you can see, I have also divided each of those, well, with those different walls, as you can see kind of in the picture. And I would have drained each of those sections one by one, and then removed kind of all of the stone dividing the different sections. This is later on in the draining process, or from the previous screenshot. And in that section, I would have. So in that square section there I actually had a conduit inside of it. So and I just kind of went around it when I was draining. Right, and so this is after the draining was completed. But I think this also would have been the time, one of the first times when my base construction went on the back burner so that I can help more with Atlantis and also with Spawn, and though I think that would have came later, but I think I still would have been in Atlantis at around this time. But basically the entire dome has been dried out. There's no more water here, and I finally can start building the base. This is just kind of a screenshot of taken from the air of basically the completed lobby, and I think that this also, as you can see, this was also my portal room, although I think this was before the draining of that portal room. And I would have drained this using a similar process to the larger dome, but this would have taken less time because this was less area to drain out. In this area here later on, I was to move. I actually tore this down and then built it farther down. I was to build a tunnel from there to connect to a tunnel that I made to go that actually eventually did connect to Atlantis, but later on I closed that part of it. But nowadays it basically just goes to my mining area. And this was after the draining of my portal room was complete, and this is when I first built my portal. And I think this also would have been a bit before my portal would be lit. And also, how I would have built the part of my portal room that has the lava at the bottom. Of course, I would have dug this floor out down to, I think it was 8 blocks or so. And then I think I just lined it with gray concrete. And all that lava I actually had to gather from the nether. Because unlike water, lava does not form, like lava doesn't spread. So like in order to have a solid floor of lava that wasn't flowing lava, I had to basically get all those lava buckets and place them down. So to get that entire floor of lava, I had to gather all of those lava buckets from the nether and then place them by hand. And then that probably took around 2 to 3 hours. But factoring in gathering the lava probably would have been around like 4 to 5 hours. And of course, this is after this is the portal room in the finished state that it is today. And this is actually another extension that I made to my base that goes to my guardian farm. And also when I was draining out that dome that you saw in front of me, Riley actually helped me with the draining process, or at least a little bit of it. And although this was kind of one of the only parts of my base that I actually would receive help with building it, and 95% of the work I still had to do on my own. But at least it was, I appreciated her help. And this was later on in the construction of the lobby, and I kind of ran into a bit of an issue with the lighting. And so I built this floor basically like with glass and sea lanterns. Well, the reason I used for the glass is because I wanted the entire floor to be one particular block, so that when you're walking over it, it's all the same sound. And of course I would have used for the glass in the floor and the glass in the dome, I would have got from the auto smelter in Atlantis. But then unfortunately I kind of hit this problem where the lighting in a few chunks was just darker than the rest of the area. And there was just this clear border between the two, and actually when I entered those chunks, it's like my whole character model would be turned dark or black. And I even came to, I believe the Donster was still admin around this time, and I think I would have came to him, and I would have came to Autism Father, and neither of them could come up with a solution for that, unfortunately. So I think that the solution I would have decided on is I would have replaced this whole floor with half slabs. Because that was just one of the only ways to fix that, and also it would also achieve the goal of preventing mob spawning. Because even if I were to have the light levels above the light levels required for mob spawning, I still would have slimes to deal with because this lobby also was in a few slime chunks. And this is another view of the lobby. And this is when I first started the process of replacing the floor. And I would have replaced the entire floor with this design that you see here. And this is another this is kind of another view of looking down at the base from the air. I think from Elytra, and this was kind of later on in the the, the lobby of work, but I didn't quite finish the floor. And this is more progress in that in this area, and that box of sea lanterns that you see in there, that was where I would have placed there's this one turtle that's when I was building this whole this whole lobby when it was still underwater. And of course it was big enough where I would get like the drown spawning inside the dome. And there's even I think some dolphins and some turtles that were inside the dome as well. And a couple turtles have left the dome before I completely sealed it off, but one turtle actually refused to make any escape attempts. And I decided that kind of from then on he was going to be my pet. And that was where I kept him. Of course, that box there was where I kept him until this area in the center was flooded with water. That's kind of where his final resting place is today. And this was taken later when the floor finally was finished. And this was taken kind of when the lobby was complete. And when I built this section in the middle, I kind of took some inspiration from the first spawn of ACO when I built that. And I wanted to have this here, of course, kind of to give something to kind of for your eyes to focus on when you enter the lobby, and also kind of I wanted to have those supports here to make it look as if the dome is supported, and also the space actually would have taken inspiration from my third base that I built on Autcraft. And I covered it in the series I made of that. And that would have been covered in my Autcraft history series as well. And this is also before my storage room was completed, so I would have had these like chests and shulkers just scattered about, and where I kept my items. And some of those shulkers actually would have come from Atlantis, so the orange ones. Because, of course, TK kind of had the idea of dyeing every shulker that belonged to Atlantis orange, because kind of TK chose orange kind of as the color to represent Atlantis, but then that was later changed to kind of the same colors that Autcraft, that are Autcraft's colors, and then the strokers were then changed to white. And this is kind of the hub that connected to my guardian farm, but this is kind of my storage for the guardian farm. And really the reason why I made it that big was so that basically the intent was that I was going to AFK at the iron farm, the guardian farm, for probably like several hours or even several days. And then basically the idea is that storage would fill up and then I would just empty it whenever it would get full. And also this guardian farm was also my main food source, as it also produced cooked cod, which I would have eaten. And another reason I wanted the guardian farm was so that I could get sea lanterns, which were one of my favorite blocks to build with, as you can see, because a lot of my base I would have used the sea lanterns, as you can see. And this was basically like an elevator where the items would go underground and then they go up to the top, and basically in that area that's kind of that it goes outward from the from the whole storage silos is contained auto sorters from there, and then that would put the items into each of the storage silos. And kind of in the bottom was the miscellaneous section. And after going through each of the storage silos, if the items didn't get sorted, they would drop down and then go into the miscellaneous section. This is just another view of the lobby. And I would have had a plan to build something over that top section, kind of similar to what I built in the base on Autcraft, but later on, but I kind of ended up leaving that open because that also served as like a kind of a convenient like entrance and exit for when I'd be using Elytra. And I still use that to this day. There's another view of the lobby. And this is my guardian farm. And this is kind of my enchanting area. And this is in my storage room was finished. And I'm not sure if this was before or after the draining, but at least the exterior of it was completed. And this is kind of another interesting contraption I've added to my base is essentially this half slab, or that is a half slab, that has water. It's a waterlogged half slab. And then below that is a dispenser with boats in it. And then you press this button and then it would dispense a boat. And of course if you're on this ice path and then you're at high speed, you can then just ram into the cactus and then it picks up then the hoppers pick up the boat. And then that would go into, and I actually put a chest where those hoppers would feed into, and that would feed into the dispenser. And this is just after the storage room was drained. And this is after the floor was finished, but the actual storage room was yet to be built. This is more after when the storage room was finished. And this is kind of the crafting room when that was finished. And so a little bit more about this storage room is I would have first built this when I think Atlantis was still. This would have been kind of a bit at the tail end of Atlantis being active. And at the time, I really wanted to have my very own auto sorter, kind of like the one in Atlantis, but a bit smaller. And so my original plan for this was that kind of these sections here would be my storage, like for say for items I had in larger quantities would go in these areas, and those were basically entire rows of auto sorting, like the sorter in Atlantis. And then those areas at the ends would have had like the other this form of sorting system that would use like a combination of item elevators and some other redstone to have a sorter that would basically do the sorting in the chests. But the drawback of that is you have to have one of each item in the chests, and most of them worked slower than hoppers would. So basically, those sorters would be slower than the design that would have been used in Atlantis. But the advantage of that is that it's a lot more flexible, and you can store like any combinations of items you want, and there's less hoppers required, which also means less lag. But my idea to have the Atlantis like sorting and that smaller sorting all together kind of proved to still require too many hoppers as well, especially for like one for like a personal build. And in fact, when the first day I was to begin using that sorting system, that there was some TPS issues, and Blue actually talked to me in private about how AF was very, very close to actually adding the hopper limits from Autcraft, and then after that, I just tore this whole system out and replaced it with what's in use today. But now I'm facing a problem where I may have to replace that system as well. And of course, this is my base, what my base looks like with shaders on. Although I don't remember, if I recall that the shader pack I would have used either would have been Chocopic medium, or like Chocopic 13 medium, or would have been Silder's Vibrant. Or it would have been either. I think it would have been either of those two. And I'll just go through these slowly so you can admire them. And then that's my guardian farm. This actually disconnects from kind of the tunnel that goes from my main area, my main lobby, to the storage room. And this particular storage system, I later on was to replace with the system that's currently in use now, which is just uses shulker box loaders, because this alone was probably around 400 hoppers or so, and I wanted to go to a system that used less hoppers, so that I replaced this with that. Oh, and by the way, this is that pet turtle, and I named him Slow Circuit because I actually asked for a name for people to help me come up with a name for him, and Telly suggested that name, and I just kind of had to use that. So yeah. And so this is kind of how my base stands as of today. Since those screenshots, I have replaced the flooring in the lobby with kind of what you see here. Because I found that just literally having the floor as solid sea lanterns and this just this carpeting here means I don't have the lighting errors, and I also get the look of the carpet, and I don't get and also this prevents mob spawns as well. Of course, as you can see, because that one spot kind of shows you, but this entire floor has the sea lanterns underneath it. But it's just just made possible solely because of my guardian farm. And this room here is gonna be different from those pictures I showed in the previous segments. And how this room stands right now is like everything from here down hasn't changed, but up here I've kind of just added these smaller storage units for the fish because I don't need as much fish as I'm needing to collect the prismarine and the prismarine crystals for the sea lanterns. And up in here is basically the items come in here, and then they go along like this ice stream, and then go into that sorter, and then just think is either for the shards or the crystals. I don't really remember, but then it goes at that topmost one, and then goes into this storage unit, this sorter, and then it drops down, then goes along that water stream on the bottom, then goes through this sorter, which is for the fish, then through that sorter, and then goes down that one on the bottom, and then goes out to the miscellaneous section. And this lamp here, as I have, so when either of those get empty of soakers, this would turn off. Or they would turn on when they're both empty. And then this here is just for like anything that doesn't sort into the other areas goes into here. That's just all the miscellaneous fish drops. And this area also saw some changes as well. And this part of my guardian farm, I think this is probably the fourth time I've changed this or something crazy, but like I've kind of settled on this design here. Though before I had a design that the original design used a lava blade that the guardians would fall through to soften them, and then they'd fall into a killing chamber with water at the bottom and hoppers as the floor. And then that would just soften the guardians so that you can kill them and like just a couple swings of the sword. But I think there seemed to have been a change in 1.14 where the guardians would actually swim in the lava and then end up dying. And that kind of prompted the change to the design that came before this design, which had a basically they would fall into a chamber like this, but there was no more lava blade. And basically the guardians would just take fall damage as they hit the bottom. And there are stacks of minecarts, where it's like you'd have 25 minecarts in a stack. And then basically but one of those minecarts would be a hopper minecart, and then that would suck up. Well, that would both kill the guardians through entity cramming, and suck up all the drops, and then those would go into the hoppers. And then I also would have had a clock that dispensed the items into a water stream. That would have sent them down to that storage room. But during the during the farm meeting that took place in the previous Player of the Month, Alyssa expressed or talked about that using entity cramming and mob farms actually could contributes to lag. And so then that kind of prompted me to change my design to one that doesn't use the entity cramming, or at least with minecarts. Well, actually, there's been debates in the farm team channel where it's like JW actually believes, or just Whiskers said that actually minecart entity cramming doesn't contribute to lag, or I don't know. I don't really even know for certain, but like this design actually was an improvement in many ways, as for one thing, there's not like 100 entities in the form of all those minecarts, and also this design basically works in a way that doesn't require any hoppers, and thus this can run without a redstone clock, although a redstone clock still isn't kind of needed, because as you can see how this works is it's with this, they either fall into here and take fall damage, or but then the items would just build up there. So every now and again this 4 would retract so that the items could get sucked up into the collection system. And fairly soon we should see the moment when that opens up. But they are still kind of dying from the entity cramming. And of course, as they've already taken the fall damage and damage from entity cramming, they actually die pretty quickly. And that water stream just continues on to the storage system. And this is kind of the redstone for my anvil dispenser and enchanting room. And so how this anvil dispenser works, say if I were to use the anvil and it breaks, I press this button and then I get a new anvil. And this is pretty much a normal enchanting room, except for this dropper here. When you press the button, you get it. Basically, that would dispense lapis so that you can enchant. And this is just kind of like a hidden room. I had to restock the lapis. And This is basically a sword I have on hand for when, say, if I were to die and lose everything, all my stuff. Say if I fall into a lava lake or something crazy and I lose all my items, I could if I wanted to use this XP farm to get my gear back, I could take the sword and then use it. And then yeah. And I've also designed this killing chamber, and I found that putting the half slabs at the top, at the upper half of the block, still allows the XP orbs to come to the player, but sometimes I still can pick up the items. And apparently I just got a shiny guardian head. Let's see how long that's going to take to reach the collection system. After much looking around, I managed to find that guardian head. Let's just say this, I actually may have neglected to put the shulker boxes in the system, so what happened was the item filters overflowed and let's say it kind of broke them and let random items flow in. But anyway, I found the head. And the storage room actually has changed quite a full lot since those pictures that I showed. Well, first of all, this room is, as you can see, I actually put all this glass here to stop slimes from spawning, and I actually kind of went with a design where you layered two different colors of stained glass to kind of get like a fog kind of effect. But later on I added this. Well, this is like a button panel for a combination lock, where if I get the right code entered, it'll open up a hidden entrance to a vault in which I keep all my valuables stored. And this is, as you can see, this staircase opened up, and I kind of have this right now, and inside the barrels is where the actual storage is. And right now I'm kind of using this to keep all my valuable mob heads, and also all my shulkers that I get from the events and on ACO, and a lot of all my other valuable items that I don't want to lose. In fact, that shulker box blue actually had to remake for me because I lost it in a wither fight. And the kind of the top area of the storage room is unchanged mostly, but the bottom levels, for one thing, I now have my own auto smelter, and down there is also a kelp farm that refuels the smelter. And this is like just kind of a mini like crop farm that runs on bone meal. And down here is my TNT powered concrete maker. And it's pretty much to use this is you just like hold down, or you stand on the pressure plate and plant the crops, and they grow with bone meal, and the items get collected. And this dropper here is so I can put items in it, and then if I want to use the farm for longer periods of time, I could stand on the pressure plate and the items would get dispensed to my inventory. But both this farm and the concrete maker share the same storage section. And I don't know if I don't really have any concrete powder to... Oh, I do have concrete powder. That's... Anyway, let's demonstrate this concrete maker. You can't really see it from here, but that TNT basically drops into a blast chamber, and those pistons that you can see kind of push those blocks downwards, and then as you can kind of see it from down there, but basically the TNT falls down there and it explodes and it breaks the blocks. And in 1.14, or as of 1.14, when TNT explodes and breaks blocks, they always drop the items. And that makes TNT blast chambers more efficient. And basically, since both these farms are sharing the storage and it's unsorted, that this is just where the concrete went. And this auto smelter actually, it's basically meets all of my needs, but this is 32 blocks long, and it's basically 2 furnaces on each side. And these furnaces are just for the smelting of kelp. And while this smelter is nice, I'm considering scaling it back, as well as my storage room, because this area, I've this whole area altogether is around as of just a bit under 1,000 hoppers, and basically I could scale this down to, well, Alyssa always says the safe limit for furnace smelters is 25 furnaces, and if I scale this back to 24 furnaces, then that uses the minimum number of hoppers. And kind of also with this sorting system, if I could also replace that with a system using shulker boxes, and I could easily cut the hoppers in this area in half or in thirds. And basically this has changed from the storage system I showed in the previous pictures, and this is just basically using the method that was used at the end of that storage system, where it would just have the sorters that would just work, that use this method that have one item per chest. And while this kind of is a great system, I like the shulker method I have been avoiding for quite a while because of the need to have to like raid like 100 end cities to get the amount of shulkers boxes needed. And of course, also this being a multiplayer server, if one player raids 100 end cities, that's like, just because basically the end cities, once they're raided, the shulkers don't respawn. And of course, like the whole thing where there needs to be a shulker end cities for everybody has kind of led to me just kind of avoiding that method. But I have also been having my shop where I raid end cities to get elytras, and also a lot of my enchanted books. Some of my enchanted books come from the end cities, and or at least my enchanted gear do. And basically, I from raiding end cities and also from the recent wither fights, I have around like 10 stacks of shulker shells by now, and let's say I actually have enough to convert this entire storage room to using shulker boxes. And while with that system I may not necessarily have auto sorting, at least I would have like compact storage, this basically like literally in this whole area. Like I could build a storage system that just takes up just this section here, that could have more storage than all of those sections combined. And perhaps I could even have a storage system with the capacity of the sorter in Atlantis, with basically in this whole area that I'm standing in. And yeah. So I didn't want to do any of that until I get this video out, just so I could show like the current state of my storage room before I start removing things and rebuilding things. And oh, and as for the kelp farm, I have kind of this lever, which is kind of the main toggle for the farm. And of course the farm itself is kind of in this area here. And it's basically works the same way as the kelp farm in that I built in Atlantis. Only I actually have it now where you can disable the entire farm by powering all of this redstone. That usually would be triggered by the observers. And then basically this minecart system is what basically it's what transports all the kelp to this smelter, which just smelts the kelp into dried kelp, and then that goes into this storage room down here, where basically for me to do craft into the blocks. And this chest is basically what loads it into the smelter. And this here actually was a bamboo farm that originally I was going to use to refuel the smelter, but this uses so much fuel that I would have to run that farm for quite a long time to get this refueled with bamboo. And that would also chew through bone meal pretty quickly. And that's really all I have to show for this base as of right now. But my future expansion plans are as follows. This is also where that's a mob farm that I have, by the way, and I would like to build basically a tunnel similar to these tunnels that connects my storage room to the mob farm. And then right below where the mob farm is located, I'd like to have a kind of a dome similar to one of these that would be my storage room for the mob farm. And in this area, I'm planning to add a villager trading hall. And possibly somewhere in this area or so, or maybe this area, I'm thinking of adding basically like a tower that goes all the way up to build height limits, at which, well, I guess also both could be something that would look cool, as most of my base is below sea level, and that could also add a part of my base that's above the sea level or above and the ground level. And at the very top of that tower, I could basically be a place to basically go on with Elytra. And actually very similarly to how that tower and the fort spawn on AC works. And I'm also planning to build a TNT cannon at the top of that tower, so basically it could launch you up even higher. And basically for a little while you don't even have to use fireworks to go with Elytra. But at around kind of the end of 2019, I ran into a bit of a predicament, and that had to do with Dan's mother, or Super Girly, and basically when she started playing on the server or on ACO, my guess is she kind of settled in this general area where my base was located. And of course there's all these islands around. And basically, well, I guess what happened was she claimed those islands as bases, and she probably had she claimed around 4 of them. And it's basically it's actually had portals going to each one of them. And let's just say this island was occupied, this island was occupied, this island was occupied, this island was also occupied. And that's just not cool, because I originally planned for this base to basically be this, like, I guess you kind of call it a mega base, where it was kind of intended to be like with Atlantis over here. How Atlantis became like a major lag problem, like with having everything just in one area. My plan with this base was to have everything more spread out. Like, basically this would be all my storage room, and then my guardian farm would be here. And then actually over in this area I was planning to build farms, more farms. And down here was planning to build my villager trading hall. And but I also have this whole area of ocean for future expansion. But with Super Girly claiming those islands, that basically took away that future expansion from me. And let's just say it took Blue probably around 5 to 6 months to finally get to returning those islands back to how they started out. And I was quite patient with Blue, but by the end of that time, I just kind of grew impatient, and it just kind of got to a point where I barely really wanted to play on ACO, because it's like I wasn't really able to expand my base anymore. But now that problem's been solved, and I do have room to expand again. But let's just say that kind of led to me no longer trusting Dan, and basically, well, Dan actually kind of caused problems for Hope as well, and well, his playstyle is basically just I suck at the game, but just give me items to help me. Like I die a lot, and I just carry everything on me, and I just die. But even though I lost items, keep giving me more items. And that's just how Dan plays the game. And also, I'd just say he just kind of has his own ways of just causing chaos. But just kind of like he's kind of like Colgan in that regard. But at least Colgan was more controlled. And yeah. And this video really is running on long, so I'm gonna end it fairly soon. And so I plan on this. I still plan on this base being my main base on ACO, and this is kind of where I am to live. But kind of as the base, like as more parts of the base get finished, I might look to other projects, like new bases to build for other purposes. Like one thing is I really want to build a base that's literally like just has traps everywhere, and its only purpose is to be like a kind of like a bunker to hide in during Hitman, or it's kind of like a fun like fortress where like players who come to kill me, and then I kill them with traps. Or at least it's much easier to put traps in than this base is. This is a very recent addition to the base, but my idea behind this is that just to kind of I wanted to build like kind of what my own version of a calm room, or I guess this would be more my man cave. And basically, I just kind of took the same concept of just having a bunch of this redstone. That's really the only purpose of it, is to look cool. And these dogs, I think, were from I was planning to use them in Hitman, but that never really happened. And I even have these levers to turn different parts of it on. It's just kind of like the same concept as of what's in my portal room, but I've also added like randomizers to it. It's basically just trigger off like an arrangement of no blocks. Whereas basically this one also outputs to this one, so it's like this one, this is also a randomizer, but it triggers less often. And this is basically like a big wave machine. There it goes. And I basically found a way to, like, I played around with the repeater timings, and it's like basically like I was able to make that kind of waving pattern. It's just find kind of cool. Though that does also lag kind of a bit. And these kind of like displays here are, I kind of added these in as like another cool addition, but this one basically counts, this is my death count, and on this one on this side is the day since the last time I died. And of course these are basically with each of these displays, I could count them up or down. Or I could reset them as well. And I've also kind of added those buttons to this side of the hallway as well. So it's like literally like each day I come to my base, I could just go down here and then either press the button to raise my death counts or raise this counter. And I also made it so if I press this button, it resets that one to 0. And this is kind of mostly it for the base tour. I kind of would like to end it here in the interest of time. And I hope you all enjoyed this video, and this is, remember to rate, comment, like, and subscribe, and this is Dusty Circuit signing off. Bye!